Listen, you little boy. You will never be anything more than a delivery boy. Get used to your poor life.
She laughed when he apologized. An entire restaurant laughed with her. She looked him in the eyes and said, "You'll never be anything more than a delivery boy." 7 days later, she stood trembling outside a corporate boardroom, holding a folder that contained her future. When the doors opened, the man sitting in the CEO's chair was the same poor young man she had humiliated in public. And in that moment, she realized something that would haunt her forever. You should never judge someone's destiny by their current struggle. 7 days. That's all it took for her world to turn upside down. 7 days between mocking a poor delivery driver and reporting to him as her boss. 7 days between public humiliation and private regret. But what Victoria Bennett didn't know was that the man she insulted had spent years quietly fighting battles that no one could see. He wasn't waiting for someone to save him. He was waiting for his moment. Have you ever wondered how many successful people were once dismissed as failures? How many millionaires were once told they would never amount to anything? How many future leaders are walking among us today wearing worn-out shoes and carrying burdens we'll never understand? Because this story isn't simply about wealth or success. It's about the dangerous habit of measuring someone's worth by what they have instead of who they are. It's about a woman who believed money gave her the right to look down on others, and a young man whose greatest success had nothing to do with becoming rich. By the end of these 7 days, one of them would gain something priceless. The other would learn a lesson she would never forget. And the most shocking part of this story isn't that he became her boss. It's what he chose to do when he finally had the power to destroy her career. This is the true story of how one moment of arrogance changed two lives forever. Victoria Bennett had spent more than 20 years climbing the corporate ladder in New York. At 43, she was everything the business world admired: successful, influential, and highly respected within her company. She lived in a luxury penthouse overlooking Manhattan, drove an expensive car, and had become the kind of executive whose opinion could determine whether someone's career flourished or ended. To the people who worked with her, Victoria was brilliant. To those who worked beneath her, she was intimidating. She expected excellence from everyone around her. But over the years, something had quietly changed within her. Success had made her believe that people deserved whatever position they occupied in life. If you were wealthy, you had earned it. If you were struggling, you simply hadn't worked hard enough. She judged people quickly, sometimes within seconds of meeting them. The clothes they wore, the confidence in their voice, the neighborhoods they lived in, all of it mattered to her. She believed she could tell everything about a person simply by looking at them. It was a belief she had carried for years. And 7 days before walking into that boardroom, that belief would lead her to make the biggest mistake of her life. The man she would publicly humiliate was Ethan Parker. At 28 years old, Ethan's life looked ordinary from the outside. He rented a modest apartment in Brooklyn and worked long hours as a delivery driver. Most people who crossed his path saw someone simply trying to make ends meet. They saw his old backpack, his inexpensive clothes, and his tired eyes after working 12-hour shifts. What they didn't see was the story behind those tired eyes. Years earlier, Ethan had graduated from college with big dreams of starting his own technology company. Unlike many of his classmates who quickly secured high-paying corporate jobs, Ethan chose a much harder path. He believed in an idea that few people were willing to invest in: a software platform designed to help businesses improve operational efficiency. For nearly 5 years, he poured everything he had into building that company. He sold his car to keep the business alive. He skipped vacations. He spent countless nights sleeping only a few hours before waking up to work another delivery shift. There were months when he wondered whether everyone else had been right about him, that perhaps he was chasing something that would never happen. Investors rejected him repeatedly. Some meetings lasted less than 10 minutes before people politely told him they weren't interested. Others laughed at his projections and advised him to find a real job. Yet Ethan refused to quit. His mother often asked him why he continued working so hard when success seemed so far away. His answer was always the same. "Mom," he would say, "people only see failure when success hasn't arrived yet." Those words would later become far more meaningful than anyone could have imagined. On a rainy Tuesday evening, Ethan accepted what he planned to be his final delivery of the day. Little did he know, that delivery would become one of the most important moments of his life. The destination was one of Manhattan's most exclusive restaurants, where Victoria Bennett was preparing to attend an important business dinner with senior executives from her company. Neither of them knew that fate was quietly arranging a meeting that would alter the course of both of their lives forever. The restaurant was unusually busy that evening. Business executives filled nearly every table as waiters hurried from one end of the dining hall to the other. Ethan had one final delivery to make before ending his shift. It had already been a long day, and he was exhausted. But like always, he carried himself with quiet professionalism. Carrying the customer's order carefully in one hand and his delivery bag on his shoulder, Ethan made his way through the crowded restaurant. At that exact moment, Victoria stood up from her table to greet one of her business associates. One of the waiters accidentally bumped into Ethan from behind as another guest stepped into his path. In an attempt to avoid colliding with everyone around him, Ethan quickly shifted his balance. Unfortunately, his hand brushed against a nearby glass of sparkling water sitting beside Victoria's plate. Before anyone could react, the glass tipped over and spilled directly onto her expensive white designer jacket. The entire restaurant fell silent. Victoria immediately looked down at her jacket in disbelief. It was one of her favorite designer pieces, reportedly worth well over $1,000. She slowly raised her eyes toward Ethan, who stood frozen in shock. "I'm so sorry," Ethan said sincerely. "It was completely accidental. Please allow me to pay for the cleaning costs." But Victoria wasn't interested in apologies. She stared at his worn sneakers, his delivery bag, and his modest clothing before laughing sarcastically. "Pay for it?" she asked loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. "With what? Delivery tips?" Several people at neighboring tables became visibly uncomfortable as the situation unfolded. Ethan apologized once again and attempted to explain what had happened, but Victoria interrupted him. "People like you are always careless," she said. "You spend your lives serving successful people and somehow still can't manage to do that properly." She continued, "Maybe if you spent less time making excuses and more time making something of yourself, you wouldn't be carrying food around New York at 28 years old." Ethan remained calm despite the humiliation. Looking directly at Victoria, he quietly replied, "Life can change faster than we realize. Sometimes, all it takes is 1 week." Victoria laughed so loudly that several people turned their heads toward her table. "1 week?" she mocked. "You'll probably spend the rest of your life delivering food." Over the next 48 hours after the incident at the restaurant, Ethan finally opened the email he had received earlier that day. What he saw left him speechless. For nearly 5 years, Ethan had been quietly building a business that almost no one knew existed. Every dollar he earned as a delivery driver helped keep his small technology startup alive. While others slept, he spent countless nights developing software designed to help large corporations streamline their operations and improve productivity. It was his dream, his sacrifice, and his life's work. The road to success had been anything but easy. Investors had turned him away. Business partners had backed out at the last minute. More than once, he had questioned whether he should simply walk away and accept that his dream wasn't meant to become reality. Yet he kept going. What Ethan didn't know was that his software had quietly attracted the attention of one of America's largest investment groups. For several months, executives had been conducting confidential negotiations to acquire his company. Legal teams were finalizing contracts while financial experts evaluated the enormous value his technology could bring to the corporate world. The email he received that rainy Tuesday evening contained news that would change his life forever. The acquisition had officially been approved. His startup had been purchased in a multi-million-dollar deal. But that wasn't even the biggest surprise. The investment group that acquired Ethan's company happened to be the parent company of the corporation where Victoria Bennett had worked for more than 20 years. After spending several weeks meeting with Ethan and reviewing his leadership abilities during the acquisition process, the company's board members became convinced that they had found something they weren't expecting: a young entrepreneur with remarkable vision, humility, and determination. They didn't simply want his technology. They wanted his leadership. The existing CEO had recently announced his retirement, leaving the company searching for someone capable of bringing fresh ideas and transforming its corporate culture. Ethan's story of perseverance, innovation, and character impressed the board far more than any impressive resume ever could. One board member reportedly said during the final discussions, "We can teach someone corporate procedures. We can't teach character. The board unanimously voted to appoint Ethan Parker as the company's new chief executive officer. In less than 1 week, the young man who had been delivering food across the streets of New York had become the CEO of a multi-million-dollar corporation. Ironically, the company he would now lead employed more than 2,000 people, including Victoria Bennett. The woman who publicly declared that Ethan would never become anything more than a delivery driver had absolutely no idea that she had insulted her company's future CEO. Life has a remarkable sense of timing. Sometimes, while people are busy judging where you've been, God, or life itself, is quietly preparing where you're going. And 7 days after that humiliating evening in the restaurant, Victoria Bennett was about to walk into a boardroom and come face to face with the greatest lesson of her entire career. 7 days later, Victoria Bennett stood outside the executive boardroom, holding a cup of coffee that had suddenly become impossible to drink. The announcement had gone out to every employee earlier that morning. The company had finalized a multi-million-dollar acquisition of an innovative technology platform, and the founder of that company had been appointed as its new CEO. Victoria had spent the entire week preparing for the arrival of a seasoned executive from Silicon Valley. She expected someone older, someone with decades of corporate experience, someone who looked like success. She couldn't have been more wrong. When the doors opened, she walked confidently into the room before suddenly stopping in her tracks. Sitting at the head of the table was Ethan Parker, the poor delivery boy she had publicly humiliated just 7 days earlier. For several seconds, she couldn't speak. Her mind immediately returned to that restaurant. The cruel words she spoke, the laughter from the people sitting around her table, the look on Ethan's face when she told him he would never become anything more than a delivery driver. And now, the very man she had mocked was the man responsible for leading the entire company. The chairman smiled and introduced him to the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our new CEO, Ethan Parker." The room erupted in applause, but Victoria could barely hear it. She was overwhelmed with embarrassment and disbelief. Over the next few days, rumors spread throughout the company. Many employees quietly hoped Ethan would fire Victoria. Some felt she deserved to lose everything after learning how she had treated him. Others wondered whether he would use his new position to seek revenge. After all, he finally had the power to do so. Then came the meeting everyone had been waiting for. Victoria asked to speak with Ethan privately. Sitting across from him in his office, she apologized sincerely for the way she had treated him. For the first time in many years, she admitted that she had judged someone based solely on what they appeared to have rather than who they truly were. She told him she expected whatever consequences he believed were appropriate. Ethan listened quietly before responding. "You judged my struggle without knowing my story," he said calmly. "But if I use my success to humiliate you today, then I become exactly the kind of person you were 7 days ago." Victoria lowered her eyes, unable to say a word. Ethan continued, "Success isn't about proving people wrong. It's about remaining the same person when life finally proves you right." He made no effort to embarrass her. He didn't fire her. He didn't seek revenge. Instead, he gave her something far more difficult to accept, a second chance. Under Ethan's leadership, the company introduced a new culture built on humility, respect, and character. Employees at every level were treated with dignity regardless of their position or salary. Victoria herself became one of the strongest advocates for that culture after learning her lesson the hard way. Years later, she would often share her story with young professionals entering the company. She spoke openly about the day she mocked a poor delivery boy without realizing she was speaking to a future CEO. Life has an incredible way of reminding us that today's struggles do not determine tomorrow's victories. The person serving your table today may own the restaurant tomorrow. The employee sitting quietly in the corner may become the leader everyone looks up to someday. Never underestimate someone's future because of their present circumstances. Because success doesn't always arrive wearing an expensive suit. Sometimes, it arrives carrying a delivery bag and quietly waiting for its moment. And perhaps the greatest lesson in this story isn't that Ethan became rich or successful. It's that when he finally had the opportunity to make someone feel small, he chose kindness instead. If you were Ethan, what would you have done? Would you have forgiven Victoria, or would you have fired her immediately? Let us know in the comments below. And if this story reminded you never to judge someone by where they are in life, don't forget to subscribe for more powerful and unforgettable stories. You never know whose story might inspire you next. Remember, one week can change an entire life.